Welcome all. My name's John Turrisi from WorkUP Queensland, and I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land which both Jesse and I are sitting on, the Turrisi and Yagara people, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and future. I'd like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and practitioners and leaders in this space as well, both virtually and also with me in the room as well, and the leaders and elders that guide our work as well. And thank you all for joining us. This is our final SOAR episode of the year. This is our fourth one now, and very excited about this episode and the speakers that we're going to hear today. And really, I guess this idea started with WorkUP Queensland needing to have a focus around growing our workforce. And obviously what we knew at the time was that student placements is a really critical pathway to our sector, and that's across domestic and family violence, sexual violence, women's health and wellbeing sectors in Queensland. So we had, around the time that we were forming the Grow the Workforce strategy, we had the privilege of meeting Alison, who I'll hand over to in a second, from Lifeline Darling Downs. And we heard about a project that she had been leading for quite a number of years around Outback student placements. It sounded amazing. So we thought there might be an idea to kind of start showcasing some of those, I guess, new and amazing ways of bringing students into our sector, and kind of build it from there. So we've been up to theme sessions throughout the year, and kind of build on it as we go. And I guess one of the really, I guess, unintended, I guess, benefits of this that we've seen, I guess, has been kind of really elevating the student story in that space, and we've had some amazing kind of cross conversations across people from all parts of different universities across Queensland, and leaders in our sector throughout the year, and even kind of grappling with, our student placement didn't go that well, and really kind of looking at suggestions from both students and other people across universities. So it's been some really rich conversations as well. We hope to kind of also circulate some resources wrapped around that to help services in kind of, attracting students in all different types of places, really the variety of placements as well available for our sector. So at this point, could I hand it over to Alison?
Thanks, John. And I'd just like to also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we are meeting, the Pigram people, and acknowledge that we are on unceded lands and honour the connection our First Nations people have to our community and culture, and pay our respects to elders past and present. I'm a grandmother, but my passion in the work field is sort of in the DV sector. We have quite a number of domestic family violence programs that we run in Southwest Queensland for our rural and remote people right across each community out here. Also just growing the workforce, and that is where and educating and supporting our younger workforce, and also our matured workforce that's coming through in this sector. It's not an easy space to walk into, but with the support, growth is successful. So with that, I started an Outback Placement because when people come from the city and universities, they come out Southwest Queensland or in remote areas, and it's not just a placement. They actually are leaving everything behind, going to somewhere new. So it's actually trying to give them a holistic experience within the community. And that's sort of where we sort of started off 7 years ago now. And so the success from there is, as I say, in the fruit of the pudding is what we've been able to successfully retain at least 50% of the students that have worked at a student placement here. whether within Lifeline here at in Southwest Queensland, or even just staying within the Lifeline, the organisation. And the success to that is putting the support networks around the student, and giving them every possible opportunity to grow, learn, and immerse themselves in our beautiful communities out here. And so I'm going to let Jess sort of talk a little bit more about that. But just within that, the where the students sort of come from, we do a really good induction sort of with them, interviews, letting them know everything. We connect them with community. So they actually get a full Southwest placement. But I'm not going to talk too much about that. So that's a little bit about myself, but I'm going to let Jess tell the story because, yeah, that's where the richness is. So over to you, Jess.
So I'm Jess. I'm a social work student in my third year. I'm completing my very first placement, and I'm actually a local resident of Charleville. And studying social work has always been of interest to me. It's something I've always wanted to do. In 2023, I actually initially enrolled in human services because the placement hours required for social work seemed like a really big barrier for me. And after enrolling in human services, I quickly switched over to social work after I realised the placement opportunities that were actually available locally to me. I'm also a mum of 4, so being local was really important. So I wouldn't be able to complete my degree without opportunities like this out in my own rural and remote community. And my experience with Lifeline has been amazing. The investment in my learning that Lifeline has put in has just been incredible. I've had opportunities to complete training such as Safe and Together, and really hone in on those skills of case note writing and all those sorts of things. So those are skills for my toolbox that I can keep as an emerging social worker and give back to my community with.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, and sort of with that, sort of putting that support around Jess is not just sort of having a task supervisor, which that's generally myself on the ground. It's also getting an external supervisor and really working with the university to really put a triangle around our students to support them in every step of the way. And yeah, that's been the best thing that's happened. And I think that's the feedback that I've got from every student is just that supportive framework in doing that is bringing out wonderful people, and able now to get locals wanting to do sort of study out here. So we're actually growing the workforce in Southwest Queensland. So it's quite an exciting time, and I'm looking forward to the future. John, I will hand it over to you to introduce Christine.
Yeah, look, at this point, we'll hand it over to Christine Morley, who's a professor of social work, discipline lead at QUT. We've asked Christine to talk to, I guess, the Commonwealth student prac placements payments. So we're looking at kind of what kind of resources are available for students, but also a bit of the journey behind that as well. It's quite an inspirational journey, I think, as well. So welcome, Christine, and thank you.
Thanks so much, John. I'm delighted to be here, and thanks, Alison and Jess, for sharing your experience. It's great to hear what's going on out in Charleville. So yeah, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk to people about the prac payment. I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I am based, and I'm on beautiful Gubbi Gubbi land today in the Sunshine Coast, and would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging as well. So yeah, just very briefly, John indicated that it might be helpful for people to know that there now is a Commonwealth prac payment to support students in social work, nursing, midwifery, early childhood, and one other profession that I can't remember, all feminised professions with workforce shortages, basically. And that prac payment was introduced by the federal government in July 1 earlier this year. And I was asked to talk a bit about the work that went into kind of getting social work involved and included in that very important scheme for our profession, as Jess was talking about. There's lots of barriers to doing unpaid placements, and especially in social work where we do 1,000 hours of unpaid placement. So it's really important. And so started to talk. I represent. Maybe introduce myself. I am from. I head the social work and human services programs at QUT, and my name's Christine Morley. And as part of my work nationally, I sit on the Australian Council of Heads of Social Work Education. And so I've been doing some research with Lisa Hodge and others for a few years about this issue of placement poverty. And we were hearing anecdotally from students about how difficult things were, but we decided to do some research and collect some data and publish that, use that as leverage with the Australian Council of Heads of Social Work Education to say, this is a really important issue for our sector. We need to do something about it. So we established a working group, and I headed that working group, and they agreed to commission me to undertake a national survey, which I did. And, we had just under 1,200 responses looking at practitioners, students, and supervisors and academics in universities, basically. So I'm not going to go into great detail, but basically, the survey found that doing these 2 blocks of placement was really meant that a lot of students had to give up paid work. That was forcing them into poverty. Almost 60% had lost 3/4 of their wage, and more than 1/3 of students had to forego their entire regular income in order to do placement, which is, as Jess was pointing out, a significant barrier. It's a significant risk for students completing their degrees. 96% of students said they didn't actually have adequate money for food. Students were rationing petrol to go to placement and choosing between food and petrol, disconnecting their phone and internet because they couldn't afford the bills, giving up, precious rental properties during a housing crisis to go and live with parents, even as mature age students, when some of them had their own children. And some, survey respondents talked about how frightening the loss of independence was for them. So we're, actually asking students to take on a huge, burden in the context of wanting to qualify as social workers. Students reported going into massive debt, maxing out their credit cards, taking out big loans in order to survive. And as we know, the costs of placements can be quite significant as well. Like one hospital social worker said she was working at a hospital that charged students $80 a week for parking, which is, and a lot of students talked about the public transport costs, which can be substantial, or petrol costs, which during a cost of living crisis is really difficult. And rural placements, as amazing as they are, can add additional costs to students if they're having to travel and move, or maintain 2 properties. And so some students talked about having also to put their children into childcare and accruing $6,000 in debts and things like that. So there was lots of, really important reasons why, as social workers, a profession that's concerned about social justice, that we would extend that to our students and take seriously what they were saying to us about placements. Lots of other impacts of, on mental health, on stress levels, and all of this also impacts on people's capacity to learn, of course, because if they're, having to work outside of placement, or they're not, able to afford food, then they're not able to concentrate. And so their learning becomes really potentially compromised if we don't, find ways to support them. Placement poverty, excessive work hours had directly impacted students' capacity to complete their degrees, which does have significant workforce implications. And we put, solutions forward, I guess, to the Australian government once we got to that that point in the campaign that you pay placements, you pay students to do placement. We didn't quite get everything that we campaigned for, and I'll talk about that shortly. But in addition, we were also seeking that professional bodies actually implement evidence-based standards. There is currently no justification or evidence to support 1,000 hours is necessary for students learning, and we do have evidence that showed that during COVID, for example, when the as we ask requirements were loosened, students could complete the same learning outcomes with 20% less hours in 800 hours. So that was some of the other recommendations that we made, I guess, to the professional body, which haven't been adopted. Expanding flexibility for students to undertake placements in their workplace, like paid placements, because that was shown during COVID to be really effective and often a deeper level of learning that was attained, not certainly a problem. Reducing the 1,000 hours to make it evidence-based, and developing a capability framework as well, which enables, students to demonstrate their capabilities, rather than like having an outcomes-based approach rather than the inputs of 1,000 hours and just kind of doing time, greater recognition of prior learning and things like that. So that the things that we put forward ultimately, that was the research from the research that I did. I'm just going to change screens. So what we did with the Australian Council of Heads of Social Work Education was run a national summit. So we did that at Western Sydney University in 2023, and we invited students, educators, industry, professional bodies, peaks. We invited the AASW. I think the president come. The board members and the CEO were not available to attend. But we had a great conversation. I really tried to convince colleagues to do a summit on student poverty. They weren't prepared to go there at that point. It's taken a long time I think, and a lot of resistance within our own profession around looking at this as an issue, and some reticence to acknowledge that this is a really challenging issue for our students. So what they would look at was reimagining field education, because placement shortages and things like that are something that all universities share and could understand. And so, but I knew that if we got students in the room, that we would be talking about placement poverty. And of course, the students absolutely stole the show, and they're very courageously shared, I think, very, often compelling and heartbreaking stories of hardship. And for many of the people in the room, it was probably the first time that they had been, aware of those kinds of stories, with, single mothers preparing to move in their car, into their car so that they can keep going with their placement because they can't afford their rental property with their 6-year-old child, things like that. So, really, confronting, I would say, information. So from that summit, the council was then convinced that we are morally compelled to do something about this. And it was kind of fortuitous at the time that the Australian government had just announced the Australian Universities Accord, which was the largest review of higher education in the last 15 years. And because I had done that national survey and presented it at the summit, we had a lot of fresh data to put straight into this submission. So my research informed that submission, and then there were publications and things like that. But whilst we were waiting for that to happen, I produced an article for The Conversation called "We Can No Longer Justify Unpaid Labour," and that was a quote from a student, and that pulled out some of the key data. But what was amazing about this paper was how it just went viral. Basically, it was the most downloaded paper for The Conversation in May 2023 across Australia. It had more than 50,000 reads. And that's not because the article was amazing. It's because the issue of placement poverty is such a massive issue for for everybody. Everybody knows somebody who's struggled through a placement, has done one themselves, has a child who has to do one, or knows somebody who is doing one or who can't do one and had to, drop out of their degrees. So basically, at that point, with it was reproduced in about 70 different media outlets as well. And then we started to be pursued, or I started to be pursued by media. So I think I did more than 100 interviews across an 18-month period, television, news, radio, all the time, just talking about these issues, trying to get it into the mainstream consciousness, and trying to, infiltrate the news in every way that we could. And got a lot of traction with that. It was mostly being picked up by teaching and nursing, not so much reference to social work, but it was actually my data and my research that was being used. We did get some reference to social work, but teaching and nursing seemed to be more, I don't know, palatable for the media or government or something to think about rather than social workers. We got some national television coverage, which was a bit terrifying, but really necessary to kind of get the message out, and that was really effective. Again, it started to reach in other places, like it moved out of nursing and teaching and into, like, suddenly we had allies in business going, what, we're not paying people to do placements? This is like crazy, and this is a real threat to workforce. And so there was lots of commentary starting to generate, and it literally took on a life of its own. And this was all happening, of course, when the university's Accord panel is meeting and reviewing the documentation. And so they were influenced and impacted by that. And we were connected with the Department of Education, who gave us a private, when I say us, what happened was, after the news, Isaac Wattenberg, who was the founder of Students Against Placement Poverty, which had been advocating separately in New South Wales, just a new group that had started since we did the National Summit. And so he got in touch and we started working together. And we met with the university's Accord panel, presented data, and then we started doing a lot of joint media, joint interviews, episodes like this one to reach people online. And then we set up I had 4 students on placement with me, and we set up Students Against Placement Poverty in Queensland, and those students produced a heap of infographics that were picked up and used by government, sent to ASW, but kind of ignored. And then we started doing, some engagement in direct political advocacy. The University's Accord interim report was released, and we were very heartened that our submission had almost been quoted word for word, but kind of miffed that it didn't include social work and was just talking about education and nursing. So we really needed to keep up the pressure, and I wrote another conversation piece. I did more media. I kept doing more interviews. I did a podcast with Linda Briskman, who was one of the heads that I worked with on this from the beginning, and Isaac Wattenberg as well. And we made another submission to the ASW based on to the ASW, but also to the government Universities Accord process to make recommendations about paid placements, etc., and the loosening of hours. Participated directly in Senate inquiries and in basically every opportunity that came up. And then myself and Students Against Placement Poverty met with the Australian Services Union, and they could instantly see that this was an issue for their members, not being able to complete placements, and many of their members are in that same boat. So they jumped on board to our campaign, and we really became a coalition at that point. There was the Australian Council of Heads of Social Work Education, Students Against Placement Poverty, and the Australian Services Union, and their kind of professional networking nationally, and their very skilled advocacy connectors with, it took our campaign to a whole different level. So then we started connecting more with government. We reconnected with the Australian Universities Accord panel chair. We had some ministerial roundtables directly with Minister Clare, which is, partly what I presented earlier in the beginning, which was the research data. And students also attended and presented that and talked to their own personal lived experience, and members of the ASU also talked about their experience of being blocked in order to do placement. So we were encouraged when the white paper come through, but again, it was mentioning midwifery and nursing and education and nothing about social work. So we kept advocating, and we actually did employ per capita to do another report, which implemented a lot of my research findings. A lot of collective action together, a lot of lobbying. Government ministers are in Parliament House quite regularly, having parliamentary breakfasts, and really talking to politicians about these issues. Senator Pocock helped, and Marie Faruqi was also very important. We hadn't held national days of action, and students become really active on their campuses and started to talk. And at one point, the ASU got the ACTU to support, and they gave us like 30 volunteer workers, or no, not volunteer, they were actually paid trainees, for a week to just, cold call, ring, promote. And so there was a huge amount of people involved by the end, and a huge amount of action. So what had become like, me working with media and doing lots of things had just sort of snowballed into this national movement, which was incredible. And then, yes, the prac payment was announced as part of the federal budget last year, and as I said, implemented this year. So we were really strongly campaigning for a different kind of prac payment. We wanted it to be universal. We wanted it to include international students. We did not want it to be means tested. We did not want it to be taxed, and we wanted it to be paid at the rate of at least the minimum wage. It's none of those things, unfortunately. It is taxed. It is means tested. It is people have to, report their extra income, and it's not paid at the rate of the minimum wage. It's only paid at the rate of the Aus study. It's benchmarked with the Aus study rate. So it's about $330 something a week at the moment. But you know what? It's better than nothing. And for some students, it'll make the difference between eating and not eating during placement, or maybe hanging in there to finish a placement and not. It's not enough. We do need more. We'll continue to campaign, we'll continue to work, continue to talk to government about that and be part of the evaluation. But that just gives a nutshell of some of the work that's gone into this behind, and where we're at, I guess, with it at the moment. So just wanting to check in with people to see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Christine. Do you mind if I just add a little bit more onto the back of what we do in our placement for you around some of some of the little solutions, not all of them. I totally agree with our students sort of come and they sort of immerse themselves in the placement. But also we work really closely with SQRH, Southwest Queensland Rural Health out here, who help accommodate in the universities, accommodating our students that come out here. So that's a really big draw card for the students. But also within the Outback Placement model, we generally got good connections with people in communities, and we're able to link them up with some maybe part-time roles. So they've got that flexibility as well. They're just little things just to help that student sort of through a placement.
And make a big difference too.
Yeah. But yeah, there's always sort of room for improvement. But yeah, just a couple of little things, like if we're sort of as an organisation working there might be some other organisations out in our communities that can get behind a few more students and get them on placement. Yeah, till we can sort of get movement with government. But yeah, so yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Christine, just a question for me. Medicine has a Students in Medicine program. I'm not sure whether you've ever heard of that. It has limitations. So when a medicine student's on clinical placement, they can, it's only with the hospitals have to apply for it. There's all, as you would fully understand, lots of restrictions and limitations, but the idea is that they can work part-time in the hospital that they're doing their placement. Doesn't replace their placement, but they can work part-time in there and in other areas or whatever. So it's still like they're working in that industry, they're still getting experience, but they're getting paid for it like as a casual type situation. Yeah, but it is like you say,
there are a few kind of schemes like in different states. I know Victoria has a scheme for master's students in social work. Like there's a few different kind of, more piecemeal approaches. But and they do make a difference, and I'm not discounting any of them because I think they're all really important initiatives. But like a
little bit too needs more.
need more. So
and there is issues. There's so many issues with students in medicine. If it's so far in advance, the hospitals have to apply. It's 50-50 paid by the hospital and the government. So the hospital that's employing the students has to come up with the 50%. The government comes up with the other 50%. And there's just so many limitations. Right?
So we have to find a way. It's an investment in the practitioners of our future. This is our force.
Exactly.
So
yeah, it's a shame there's not more of it, but anyway.
Thank you, Christine, for that, and for also for presenting, the massive body of work that goes behind this that often not everyone knows about that, right? So so thank you for for sharing that incredible story as well to get to this point. And I acknowledge
can I just say that the other heads that I worked with that joined me with Linda Briskman were Professor Lynn Keevers and Professor Wendy Bowles, and it was the four of us really for the council component anyway who led that, and I probably should have mentioned them earlier.
And Christine, could I just ask quickly, just in terms of practical advice for students who might be embarking on a placement, potentially in our sector or even for organisations in our sector, they may not be aware that this even exists. Like, is there?
Yes, so they could just Google Commonwealth prac payment.
Okay.
We would hope there was an information pack that went out from government to all universities. So we would hope that all universities are actually actively talking to students about applying. And, obviously there has to be as much take up as possible. There are eligibility requirements, and those requirements are things like, if you need to show that you've worked 15 hours a week for the 4 weeks prior to going on placement. So, I would say to students, so if you don't have work, like if you can get some before you go on placement, then that's a great idea because you might qualify for a payment that you might otherwise not have been eligible for. If you're you're a recipient of a Centrelink payment, then you are automatically eligible as far as I am aware. And this payment was introduced to, mostly help people who need to give up employment in order to do placement, and people who are from equity groups, particularly lower socioeconomic groups. So those people will automatically be eligible, but then the payment is, taxed, and it might have implications for what they receive, which we were a little bit disappointed about, I have to say. And it would be different if it was seen as a wage, as a minimum wage, rather than as a welfare scheme type payment. But that's what the government decided. So it still doesn't help some of the students that I were working closely with, like mothers who are, essentially caring for newborns and trying to do a placement, they'll have to put their, even though they're not doing paid work as such, it's very important unpaid caring work, and they have to pay then somebody else to do that work. And even though they can, demonstrate, financial hardship for going into placement, they currently don't qualify. But there is a special, like, exceptional circumstances kind of criteria as well, and they can apply through their university to get that. So I would, think that we would try and expand that as much as we could to include as many students as possible in this payment scheme.
Yeah, and we also advocate for that too, or sort of as an organisation with student placements of bursaries. Universities have some access to bursaries and things, so getting the students to really go back and ask the university what financial support there is, because some students don't know how to ask that. So that's something that we sort of try and sort of instigate with the student as well.
QUT does support students who are going rural and regional placements, especially.
Yeah, the unis are great.
Bursary. So we think that, and I worked on the equity committee that was part of implementing that scheme across our university wide before I worked on this placement poverty issue more broadly. But yeah, I think it's a really important issue, basically.
Agreed.
But also just, advocating with the AASW to have evidence-based standards as well, because the ASW have, were not part of this campaign. They did take credit for it, but they weren't involved, and they haven't, well, initially they got rid of placement hours altogether in one of the drafts of ASWIAS, which is also not what we want at all. But to have like 0 or 1,000 and there's no flexibility in between seems a little bit crazy, and one size fits all universal model, which has so many inequities attached to it.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you. I'd like to, at this point, pass it on to Matthew, and I think also Lisa as well. One of the things we have had a spotlight on the Southwest region, but I guess as we've kind of been rolling out this SOAR program, we've got to know, I guess, initially Lisa Fanning, and started to hear about some really good work that's happening in that region, but certainly outside of our sector. So I think there's probably a good opportunity to hear about what is going on in rural and remote health, but also with the lens of what might be able to be kind of replicated for our sector as well. So I might hand it over. Is it to you first, Matthew?
Hey, g'day guys. I'll start. I'll predominantly talk about what we offer at Murder for students coming to the Northwest, particularly from a student support, pastoral care, and accommodation space. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Matt Pigram. I am a registered nurse and have been working with JCU Murder for just going on 6 months now. My role as the multidisciplinary training team leader is predominantly around placement coordination, placement support, more so the strategic side of things. We look at student experience and what it means for a student to come to Mount Isa in the Northwest, and what kind of experience they have. Murder currently sits on Kalkadoon lands, and we have a very wide footprint of our accommodation in particular. So we have 7 properties currently in Mount Isa. You can see a couple of the properties are there. And which totals around about 60 rooms. depending on, fluctuations in things that are being repaired and whatnot. I think we currently sit at about 50 rooms with some accommodation being out of action for a little while. And then we go a little bit wider throughout the northwest with a number of different smaller communities that have accommodation for students to go and do their placement. Places such as Normanton, Burketown, Dejara, and Cloncurry, which is really taking off at the moment. We also have accommodation and staff members in both the Central West and the WEPA TI North Queensland top end area, with accommodation in Longreach, Blackhall, Barcaldine, Winton, and Boolyah, and then WEPA and Thursday Island. So we've got quite a big footprint. And plenty of opportunities for students in the health disciplines to come and take advantage of our accommodation and do their placement under Murder-Purnie. So in terms of the process in which students would go through to apply for accommodation, it starts with the universities, and a number of different ways in which requests are made on the varying disciplines that we get through. We are currently in a exercise, a project of trying to centralise that whole process to make it a little bit easier for not only the universities but also our clinical leads, other organisations like NGOs and things, to be able to request student placements for would look like probably halfway through 2026 to going into 2027. When universities request a placement and that placement is offered and confirmed, students are then able to apply online for accommodation in the area in which they'll be going to do their placement. There are some stipulations around the students being able to apply and be allocated accommodation here in Mount Isa and throughout Murder-Purnie. First and foremost, they need to be in a Commonwealth supported place, and that is due to our funding agreement through the federal government. We don't have a lot of flexibility around that at the moment, considering that we're trying to realign with that. And it also is offered as free accommodation, which not a lot of the UDRHs do, but we are one UDRH that offers free accommodation to Commonwealth supported place students. Unfortunately, we can't accept international students at this time. We were going through a pilot program of offering paid accommodation to international students, but unfortunately we've had to wrap that up and realign ourselves with the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program funding. Students, once they arrive, are fully supported through Murder-Purnie from a pastoral care perspective. So they gain orientation to the accommodation about their roles and responsibilities while they're staying here. What is on offer in particular Mount Isa, but also Cloncurry and surrounds in terms of activities, how to access sport, how to keep themselves busy while they're here. They also get cultural awareness training, and that is with our Head of Indigenous Health, Sean Solomon. And that is a full day program going and learning about local Aboriginal culture, and also basically how to implement that within their clinical practice. We also offer things like camping hire, gear hire, bike hire. We have opportunities for students to engage in volunteer work if they wish. So particularly in between the months of April and September, there is a lot happening in the Northwest region. So things like rodeos and camp drafts and all those fantastic things, students are able to get involved and volunteer for things like free tickets and things like that. There's also the opportunity for students to pick up some paid part-time work if they wish. And that can be negotiated through our placements team to help out finding them some work. We've recently had a social work student who's been with us for going on 14 weeks. And she picked up a little bit of part-time paid work at one of our local cafes, which was great. We also have the opportunity for students to, if they are really looking for that rural and remote experience, and what we encourage is obviously rural immersion, is to get involved in the community and making sure that we kind of cater or bespoke opportunities for them if there's anything particular they're looking for. So really try and push, and particularly Lisa's got a finger on the pulse in terms of what's happening in the community. So we send out things like student updates and ideas around what they can get up to while they're here, which is wonderful. Just going to the allied health students. So we also currently run a bursary program through the WorkUP program for our allied health students. So as of 2026, we'll have 25 students with Queensland Health's WorkUP program, which offers obviously free accommodation, student support through Murder-Perney, $1,000 bursary that's paid at the end of placement, and also their placement hours are subsidised so that they can take on paid part-time paid work. So they only do 3 days a week, and then the other 2 days are for them to either study or take on part-time work. So all subsidised through the WorkUP program, and JCU supplies the bursary for the students. I think that's about it from our end, from my end, I should say. But Lisa might want to add a few things to that.
Sorry, just got to find the unmute. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so as Matt said, I mean, that covers the undergrad kind of the student support side of things, but obviously there's a lot of grad programs and that out there. Micro, unfortunately, is focused on the student side of things, but if there was any graduate students that came out, or graduates I should say, not graduate students, that came out for their programs, things like that, there's a lot going on in the town. It's how much people have heard about Mount Isa and the surrounding areas with the partial mine closure, things like that. There's been a lot of concerted effort with well, some of the meetings I'm involved with at the moment is within the health and social assistance sector. They're trying to really bolster it, and I mean, one of the sad statistics about the region that is covered up here, very broad region, again, slightly different boundaries to what micro covers, but we unfortunately have the highest DV rates of all of Queensland. So it's definitely not a bragging point, but it's something that they are seriously looking into, and how they can in various ways. And I actually think student placements is potentially, and a graduate sort of system is very much an area for expansion and to help support that sector, including graduate programs and things like that. There's a lot of support, like I say, afterwards. I've been involved in a few other meetings, like it's called MyPOG, and I don't actually know what it stands for, Mount Isa Police and something. But anyway, it's Matt mentioned the student update, which includes just local stuff that's going on around the community, as well as regular free things to do. They have a lot of so much free stuff to do here, like line dance. Some of the students go to the line dancing every week. It's they love it. There's free aquarobics classes and things like that. So the students really take to that, as well as we have a massive police force out here, something like 190 for a country town. It's massive, but it covers a big area. Obviously, you've got something like 170 odd person police force, and you've got but so they're also getting the student update. We're extending it on to them because they're finding huge value out of it as well, because they want their new recruits, their new graduates, their new the hospital and everything are using it as well. They want people that come here, whether they be students or graduates or even, management level. They're trying to find ways to make sure that people are immersed in the community as quickly as possible, because as the likes of yourselves down in the south west regions, you'd be aware that immersing yourself in the community is the best way to keep people, and they find their own community, little group of friends. They find their people to do stuff with, and it's a great way to keep them here, or to get them here and to keep them here. So there's implications for really making that concerted effort to immerse students and other people that come to the area as quickly as possible into the community, because then they see how good it is to live in the country. So a few other things, interprofessional learning is Matt mentioned it from a undergrad level, but there's also, they continue that on from something I deal with in my position with regional training hubs is beyond that, it's everyone. And we do education sessions that not only students are invited to, but also very experienced health workers are also invited to it. There's a Northwest Queensland mental health network, which again is a collaboration of all the sort of 54 Reasons, Lifeline, the hospital, Northwest Remote Health. They all come together and support each other, that social assistance sector type thing, to really support each other. They have times where they come together and do just something fun, so they can be with like-minded people and just breaking away from their day-to-day stresses. So yeah, there's lots going on, lots hopefully happening in the future that will strengthen this health and social assistance sector. I've got my fingers crossed for that. So yeah, it's kind of what Micro already does and has done for years is so good, and hopefully gets even better. And again, from a town level or a region level, hopefully we can, from a hub's perspective and other areas, we can make the postgraduate side of things even stronger as well, which it all helps each other. So yeah, I think that's really all from me.
Thanks very much, Lisa and Matt, for that, and for also, I guess, bringing out that connection across, our sector, the GFE sector as well, and what some of those collaborations might be together as well going forward. I do wonder how we can kind of build on each other's strengths as well. So thank you very much. Was there any questions around that or any reflections?
No, I just want to ditto it, and it's so nice to see sort of that same sort of immersing students into community. That is sort of a part of that, making them feel welcome, and showing that there is a lot more. A lot of them come out thinking that, what am I going to do? There's nothing out there. But when they actually get out here and you show them what the thing, they go, oh my God, there's so much to do out here. I'm never going to get that in even a lifetime out here. But yeah, so love hearing those stories. So
it's absolutely consistent feedback that we get is, I didn't have enough time out here, or I wish my placement was longer, or students really, if they come with an open mind and a willingness to immerse and a willingness to learn, they have a fantastic time. And I think that's across all rural and remote regions in Queensland and Australia, because these areas have so much to offer, and it just takes that little seed planted with them, that if you just immerse yourself a bit in the community, you're going to have a fantastic time.
Sorry, you go.
I just finished a video interview with one. We've had a Year 5 medical student out here, and she's done all her placements. I usually move around, but she's done all hers out here this year. And she said exactly that. She goes, I came out, I asked her, one of the questions I asked her was, what surprised you or whatever? And she said she came out fully expecting to be bored on the weekends, but she said, I've had no time to do I've had no time. Like, it's just my Tuesday nights are this, my Wednesday nights are that, my weekends are going here or doing that. So she said it's just been, and she said how welcoming people are. She was just been blown away by how open people are to making sure, like whether it be through JCU Micro, or the where they're working, it's the hospital or wherever, how open they are to taking them out and showing them places and pulling them into their circles. So it's been, she was just blown away and had an amazing time for the year. So yeah,
amazing.
It's good.
Could I just ask a question? It might be a little bit across the board, but around your experiences and observations around, are students coming from other parts of Queensland for their placements, and does that actually, result in an ongoing, role or position there in community after that? Any comments on that?
I think we get students predominantly from all over Queensland, and then periodically from other states. And there certainly has been stories of students coming back, or continuing on and gaining employment at the local health service or in the community. The one particular one I had this year was a young pharmacy student, and actually I'll make this story quick, but it's a really good story. A young pharmacy student from Townsville, who was actually a Somalian refugee, and came out here with his family at the age of 8, and he's just about completed his pharmacy degree, and came out here for a placement and loved it that much that he applied for a job as an intern next year at the pharmacy at Mount Isa Hospital and got it. So that, those kind of sort of stories, I think are fairly consistent, I think, throughout rural and remote communities, that students come out here, do their placement, love it, and want to sort of, get more of it and gain employment here, when they finish their degrees.
For sure, I'd have to agree with Matt. Like, you walk into one of the chemists here, and I can recognise a couple of the interns from this year that were students last year and the year before. So it's these faces. And we had Liam, he's a social worker. He did his at the end of last year. He did his long. That was the last thing he had to do, his long placement. And I remember him calling saying, "Oh, is there any chance I could stay at the student accommodation a couple of weeks longer, because I've actually secured a job here and I'm going to stay. But before I can get my, I have to get all that little paperwork stuff to get a place to live and things like that." So I was like, "Of course you can. Please stay. We'll give you those few weeks in the accommodation so you can secure yourself." So, again, just as Matt said, just, you and the nurses, a lot of the nurses, exactly like the pharmacy student that Matt just said, they'll apply for their graduate year pretty much while they're here or soon after.
Excellent.
Can I add something there too?
Yes, Alison, please.
Just on that, I love it when the students make their connections but I also just quickly touching on a story where a young man, he was never going to stay out in southwest Queensland, but the enrichment of having a placement in rural and remote, he's gone back home to live in Brisbane, but he's actually always looks for jobs that he can actually travel back to southwest Queensland to actually provide a service that might be needed in the community. So even just having a placement in rural and remote, sort of right across the Western Queensland corridor, I think they take a piece of us away, even if they go back to the city. So they get that real enriched connection. So that's really nice listening to some of the students with that as well, even if they can't stay out west. So, but I prefer them to stay out west with you, Lisa and Matt. Definitely want to keep them.
So, well, thank you, and thanks again to Lisa and Matt for sharing that presentation. As a final spotlight, and I guess just in thinking about, the versatility of student placements kind of experiences that are available, WorkUP has had the opportunity to, trial some shorter placement options through the School of Justice at QUT. So we've had 2 student projects this year. So we thought this might be a nice little opportunity to kind of share that experience as well. And I think it's been quite an enriching reciprocal kind of experience for both WorkUP and the students. And we've got two of those students with us. So Jasmine and Emily, thanks for coming along. So I'm not sure who to throw to first, but would just one of you like to share a little bit about your story and maybe throw to the other person?
I'm happy to start, John. So, hi, I'm Emily. So, I'm studying a Bachelor of Justice and Communication. In terms of what attracted me to the sector initially, I honestly probably didn't think it'd be for me. I thought it'd be a little bit too heavy in terms of the work, and it's something that I didn't think I'd be able to separate myself enough from. But I had to take a couple of university courses in it, and I really the framing of it wasn't, yeah, no, it's going to be light and breezy, but it was sort of all the things going on in the world at the moment that you have absolutely no control over, this is something that's right near you and you can do a lot about. And so that was really something that I went, that's a sort of more positive and sort of solution-based way of looking at things. And so that I found as like a really attractive prospect. I got to meet John at an event at university, and then I chose to take a placement opportunity with WorkUP because I really wanted to learn more about the sector and what all those different services and specialty areas looked like. And so for a justice student, we don't have mandatory placement, we don't have any placement hours, but it's obviously still a really valuable experience as we've heard today. So it was something that I really wanted to do. And so I did 10 days with WorkUP, all in person in the office, which was really great because I got to meet all the different members of the team, understand the different roles they had, the different areas to our workforce and workforce development. I got to work a bit on this SOAR project. That's where I got to meet Alison and parts of the workforce survey, and just really, I got to have a really good experience in understanding what our workforce was and all the different channels of that. In being also a communication student, that was something that WorkUP, I guess, found valuable and helpful. And so I've been lucky enough to stay on for my second semester of university working part-time as a communications officer. And so that's been such a wonderful experience to be able to remain as part of the team and keep working on the progress we've made and keep connecting with the sector, which has been great.
Thanks, Emily. And it's been really great that it's kind of another good example of how it's resulted in being, a part-time in a part-time position on our team as well. So yeah, that's a great outcome. And Jasmine, would you like to share a few words about your experience?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm studying a double degree in behavioral science and justice at QUT. So yeah, this 10-day placement unit at QUT is offered as an elective in the justice degree. So it's designed to give students a chance to like gain real world hands-on experience before they graduate. So that's what really attracted me to the unit, because going into my final semester, I was feeling a bit nervous about, graduating and starting my career. So I was really looking for the opportunity to, have some workforce experience, but with the support of the university coordinator. And another really good part of the program is that you get connected with other people also completing placement at the same time. So you also have that additional layer of support. I was able to jump on a few different projects, including the workforce planning workshops, which bring together different workers across the domestic violence sector to identify workforce needs and develop strategies for sector sustainability, which was really interesting to see how these statewide initiatives come together and get developed. I also did some work on the student induction program that's being developed, which I think was quite valuable for the program to have a student's perspective on how a student would, I guess, take the modules. And I gave some feedback on clarity and engagement and stuff like that. So yeah, I think one of the biggest learning opportunities was just seeing how the organization I guess, goes day to day with their stuff. And honestly, before my placement, it's not like a organization like WorkUP, who's not necessarily on the front lines, isn't something I really considered as a career for me. So it was a really good eye opener into the variety of different career paths in justice and the domestic violence sector. So yeah, I really highly recommend this model, and it allows you to put theory into practice and gives you like a clearer sense of direction and a sense of readiness and preparedness for starting your career.
Thanks, Jasmine. That was amazing, and thank you for sharing your story and your experiences. Very valuable. Would anyone have any other comments or questions or thoughts?
Can I just ask a question to both of you ladies? We generally we talk about the social work placements for like long period of time. How did you find the 10 days?
Do you want to go first, Jasmine? Or?
Yeah, no, I found it really good, especially since it is like an elective. It doesn't really coordinate with your other classes. So the 10 days was good, so it wasn't so overwhelming, because you do also have to complete all your other units as well as, part-time work and anything else that's going on in your life. So yeah, I found that very smooth.
I'd say the 10 days was a really good amount of time. I know it doesn't sound like much, I guess, especially compared to other workforces where you've got 1,000 hours, but we're still, I think John could attest to, we got a lot of work done in those 10 days. And especially depending on how you space them out, you really get used to understanding the work, the vocabulary used, how everyone works together in a team, and it's enough to both contribute to the work and then also have an understanding of what your future role could be in this area.
Yeah.
Thanks, ladies. Well done.
Yeah, no, that was good. And I think it was really great to get students' input right at the start as well around, we took a more project-based kind of approach to it. So what might be the project or pieces of work you might be interested in, kind of built it around that. So yeah, it seemed to work really well. So I hope to keep doing that next year as well. Thank you. So Alison, did you have anything else just to pull it all together at all, or?
No, that was sort of such so much knowledge out there, and it's really nice to sort of hear right across, especially from Matt and Lisa there in regards to what they do in Southwest. It's Central West, Southwest down here, but across the corridor in the Western, we're trying to sort of put that wrap around life experience as well as the work experience. But the knowledge from Christine, thank you so much for that, because it's definitely something that we've been looking at, of putting some paid placements more around in the psychology with psychologists and things, but into that social work and some of the placements. We do offer those part-time ones, but it'd be so much nicer if we could sort of work out some sort of payment with them on placement, because when they come out here, they do immerse in the team and they do sort of do a lot of work and buddy up. We have a lot of risk management out here around having 2 workers, and the students are generally within that sort of scope. So they're doing the work of the workers. So thank you, Christine. That was great. But yeah, thanks, John and Jessie, for the amount of work that you do and putting behind all this and your team. This has been a wonderful experience for me as well. So thank you very much.